Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to install a carburetor on your snowblower with a Tecumseh engine. Now this video today will apply to all Tecumseh engines on snowblower between 8 to 11 horsepower. And here's the snowblower that I'll be replacing the carburetor on today. It's got a 10 horsepower Tecumseh engine. And I just flipped up the machine here to show you how this carburetor has been neglected. It's been sitting outside like this for years. So I just thought I'm going to put on a carburetor instead. And the reason why I'm putting a whole new carburetor instead of trying to clean the old one is because I've got these aftermarket carburetors here from Oregon, and these cost less than half price of an OEM carburetor. And for some of you guys out there that do not like to clean carburetors and want to make sure that your stuff's going to run properly, this may be the better way to go. You just get a new carburetor, put it on, and then you know it's going to run. Now to start with, I'm just going to pop off the choke knob here. You're going to need to remove this screw. Sometimes it's a 3/8 bolt. Now there's also usually a screw over here, but I believe it's vibrated out. When I reinstall it, I'll put a screw there. Now you're also going to need to disconnect the wire that goes to the key here on the snowblower. And to do that, all you need to do is loosen up the Phillips screw. And now the wire should come right off. Now usually you need to remove both screws over here, but because the bracket is either broken or it's come off the carburetor, I should be able to take the whole cover off with the bracket still on. And now just remove the cowling. You're going to need to get it past the choke shaft over here, so just pull on it, and then you should be able to pull up. So the screws that bolt the bracket to the carburetor had vibrated out, so I'm just going to take off the two screws here from the cover. Then I'm going to have the bracket off so I can put it on the new carb. So this is the bracket and the two screws you're going to have. Now what you can do here is start by disconnecting the primer line. Now what you need to do is take off this screw, and there's another one exactly the same over here, and they each have a nut at the end of it. Now use a good Phillips screwdriver to do this. And you're going to see the nut come off here. And now I'm just going to reach down and take off the other screw. And you can reach in and hold the nut if you can. Now what I'm going to do is just basically undo the carb. It was just slightly stuck on there with the gasket. Now you're going to need to reach down and undo the fuel clip here. Use a good pair of pliers like this. Just go in there and squeeze it and back it off. And I'm going to use a slotted screwdriver and just back off the fuel line. And as in this case, the fuel line's in pretty bad shape here, as you can see. So that fuel line's going to need to be replaced, obviously. Now when you replace a carburetor, you want to take good note as to which hole the linkage is in. And now to remove the carburetor from the linkage, it's very easy. Just tip it up, and then it's going to come out because there's a Z-bend at the end of the linkage. One thing that's extremely important not to do when you replace a carburetor is to bend the linkages. If you end up accidentally bending the linkages, your engine may run too slow or too fast after you've reinstalled the carburetor. Now the part number of the carburetor I'm using today is part number 50-659. It replaces Tecumseh part number 640349. Again, this is the non-adjustable carburetor. If you want to use an adjustable carburetor on your snowblower engine, the aftermarket one is part number 50-663. And it replaces OEM number 632370A. Now here's a close-up look at the old carburetor. Now before you install the new carburetor, you just have to remove the choke assembly back here and install it on this one. All you have to do is remove the two Phillips screws. And now you just want to install the pin here in the hole and screw it back on. And you want this on fairly tight. And just make sure it works. Now as you can see on the old carburetor, the linkage went into this hole here, So you just want to make sure you put it into the same hole on the new carburetor. Now what I've done is replace the fuel line and the primer line before installing the new carb. I believe I do have an older video showing how to do this, and I'll post a link under today's video. Now I'm going to retrieve the linkage under here, and I'm going to install it into that little hole. Just like that. Now you want to make sure you install the gasket between the carburetor and the adapter over here. If you're using the same carburetor as I am today, you will have a gasket that came with it, or you can use the old one. So what I'm going to do here is just put the screw in there. I'm going to put the gasket into the screw like that, and I'll put the other screw on the other side as well. And this will help to keep the gasket in line so that it's not falling off when you install the carb. And I'm also going to install the fuel line. And you want to make sure that the fuel line is installed flush to the carb, and then install the fuel clamp. Now I'm going to install the carburetor on the screws. So you want to push the screws through the holes on the carb here. You may have to back off the screws just a bit to get the nuts started. And I'm going to reach in from underneath with the other nut, and I'm going to tighten up the screw on this side. Now you want to tighten up both screws evenly. And you're going to want these on fairly tight because these engines vibrate like crazy. And I'm going to reconnect the primer line. Now once you've installed the carburetor, you want to move the throttle lever up and down just to make sure that everything works right. And everything looks normal to me. So now I'm just going to fuel it up and try it out. Now after you've fueled it up, you want to make sure there are no leaks around the carburetor and the fuel line. Now before you start anything up in your shop, make sure it's well ventilated. So I'm going to give it some choke, a few shots of primer. It's actually idling pretty good, but it just stalled. So it runs pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. The smoke you see on there is because I had to tighten up the muffler bolts, and I put a bit of oil where they go into the block. That's what's smoking. Now if you notice your engine is revving too high, you can back off this little screw here. If it's revving too low at full end, you can tighten it in. It's revving a bit high, so I'm just going to back it off a bit. You don't want these engines to go over 3600 RPMs. And if you find that your engine is idling too slow, all you have to do is turn in this screw. If it's idling too fast, you just turn it out. This screw here does not affect the air-fuel mixture of the carburetor, as this carb is non-adjustable. All it's going to adjust is the idle speed. Now that I know it's running properly, I'm going to reinstall everything, starting with this bracket. Now I'm going to reinstall the cowling. And you want to get the choke shaft through the hole here. Now I'm going to install the two screws that screw on the carburetor bracket. Now I'm going to install the original screw that was here. And I found one to replace the one that was missing from here. And now I'm going to reinstall the choke knob. You just want to get it on the choke shaft like this. and push it on. Now in most cases I don't just replace the carburetor right off the bat all the time. I always try to clean it and fix it first before putting a new carb on. This video is mostly for those who just want to replace the carburetor and know that it's going to run. And this can be cheaper if you do it yourself like I did today than if you bring it into a shop and pay people to rebuild your carburetor or install a new one. So that'll be it for today's video, guys. Make sure to follow me on Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. The links are underneath today's video. And have yourselves a great day.